And in some cultures, in kind of modern Western secular cultures, what's called weird, that's Western educated, industrialized, rich democracies, men and women tend to converge and take care of offspring more together. But in most cultures, men hold their kids 15 minutes a day. Women hold their kids 9 times as long as men do. And they always know that they're the mother of their offspring, for example. And so you should see a lot of differences also in domains that have everything to do with child rearing. And there's also this difference in the kinds of roles that men and women have had in terms of hunting, gathering, and seeking out mates, warfare. It's never been the case that a band of women have gotten together with spears and hand axes to go and kidnap the men from a neighboring group and have sex with them. That's never ever happened, right?
God damn it.
And so,
that's another fantasy dead.
This idea, there's kind of a fantasy, and I think it's, the more I've learned about kind of leftist ideology, the more I think it comes from a really good place. It would be wonderful if human nature was so malleable that literally women could be socialized to go to war, to whatever. That wouldn't be a great outcome, but it would be great if human nature was that malleable. So I think it comes from a really nice place, but I don't really think that human nature, especially sex differences, are that malleable. And so you see these kinds of differences. So if you look at the research, what you see is that there's this kind of minimization of personality differences. So for example, if you look at extroversion, which is one of the big 5 personality factors, men and women don't really differ much on extroversion. But if you look at the internal facets of extroversion, you'll see women are more warm than men are, and men are more assertive and sensation-seeking than women are. And so there's this scientist named Marco Del Giudice at University of New Mexico. He's my evolutionary psych colleague, and he did a really great paper called The Distance Between Mars and Venus. And he said these characteristics that men and women have, they don't occur in a vacuum. These personality characteristics, they converge and they correlate together. And so if you look at a cluster of all the masculine personality characteristics and all the feminine personality characteristics, there actually is a big difference between them. And that's averaging across gay men and gay women as well. So there's still a big difference between these two groups. And if you look at the personality factors as they are, like extroversion, agreeableness, etc., then you'll see smaller differences. Or if you look at very specific things. Like if you, for example, what's her name, Cordelia Fine, did Testosterone Rex, and she said, yes, it's true that in these personality factors, they say men are much more risk-taking than women are, but they didn't ask about certain kinds of risk, like what about the risk of cooking a souffle that you've never cooked before? I'm like, that's not that. Nobody's gonna kill you because you cooked a bad souffle, right?
So one thing that I've always been fascinated with is the premise of women like a bad boy. Is that scientifically true? And if it is, why so?
Yeah, so I think that is true, but so it depends on the kind of environment you live in. So there's some idea that you're malleable in the beginning years of your life as to how much you like these kind of what are called dark triad characteristics. So dark triad is narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. And those are, how great you think you are.
That's an accurate description of most comedians.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Narcissists are actually considered more attractive than other people who aren't narcissists.
Really?
But probably because their narcissism is somewhat informed by their actual their mate value, what we call mate value. So I think more attractive people are more likely. Attractiveness and narcissism do correlate, objectively. If you think somebody's more attractive, they're more likely to be narcissists. And then whenever I fill out a narcissistic personality inventory, they're like, would things be better if you ruled the world? I'm like, well, yes, objectively, that's true. But so these kinds of personality characteristics. So one idea, it kind of floating around, is that if you are in a volatile environment, so if you're in an environment where, let's say, you don't have a father around, then you're getting cues from the environment that either your dad's dead or that this is not the kind of environment where men invest in their kids, for example. Or also, if you're in an environment where you see people deceiving each other or cheating each other. So what's the best thing to do in an environment like that is to have babies that are also going to be able to be good liars and good at deceiving and manipulating other people. You don't want to find the most agreeable, nice guy in the world to have kids with if you're in an environment that is volatile in this way. And you see this this kind of dichotomy about what women like in romance novels. So in romance novels, which are the best-selling books on the planet, what happens is the woman falls in love with a man who's this bad boy rogue. What are the top, they're pirates or thieves or whatever, right? And then he becomes so devoted to her that he can express this deep devotion to her, and he's nice to her and agreeable to her, where he isn't to anybody else. And that is sort of this feminine fantasy, is to be with somebody who has the capacity to manipulate and fuck over and deceive other people, but doesn't to her, is so in love with her that he treats her really well and her family and her kids really, really well. And that's what really optimally, I think, women want, because that's the kind of phenotype, that's the kind of man who could succeed in any environment. And he would make the kind of kids that could succeed in any environment.
So like he would be nice to her, but he would also be able to protect her from external danger and provide or whatever. Is that the evolutionary? Yeah,
that kind of thing. But if you're really in a really volatile environment, you want somebody who can, like fuck over other people. So that's like what you optimally want. And even women who say like, oh, I want a man who's generous. Yeah, you want a man who's generous, but you don't want to come home and find a tramp sleeping on your sofa because he decided to bring one home. You want a man who's generous to you. Yeah. You want a man who's generous to your family. You want a man who always tells you potentially that you're right. But there's like a whole manosphere red pill thing about how much women need pushback and how women actually test to make sure that men that they're with actually still have these kind of bad characteristics, that they can still fend for themselves in that kind of way.
Oh, really? Tell us about that. That sounds interesting. I haven't heard about this stuff.
So I'm sort of writing a book, and I probably won't go into very much, but I've started reading some of this red pill stuff, because I just...
So for anyone who doesn't know, including me, what is red pill?
You don't know what red pill is?
I'm familiar with red pill in the sense of people who might have been left-leaning becoming less left-leaning.
There's a lot of different red pills that you can possibly take.
I'm starting to get the sense that's not the one you're talking about.
No, that's not the one I'm talking about. Red pill is it's men, so I can think the common wisdom is that women have it worse than men, women are oppressed compared to men, and the red pill, like for example in this like red pill documentary, says that actually women do have some advantages, and these are underplayed relative to men's advantages. And not only that, but that women also do manipulative things to men in order to get their way, that women have kind of secret power.
Wait, is this the Cassie J documentary?
Yeah.
I have seen it, and I've just asked you a question about something I've seen if I've not even
But there's extra red pill stuff. Okay. There's also like red pill stuff about what's called shit testing. So when women and I guess you're blissfully ignorant of the way.
This is less a podcast. You're learning about women, mate.
That's good. I'm happily married for a long time now, so
he doesn't even realise he's getting played. That's how deep it goes.
I've repressed all of this information just not to know what's happening and just to be happy with my life. So please tell me what's wrong with my life.
So women whatever do something called shit testing, and they do a variety of things to see kind of what the boundaries are, like how much they can get away with, how generous a man is going to be with them, how compliant he is to her demands, especially if they're unreasonable. So if you make an unreasonable demand of a man, is he just going to say, yes, I'll do that? Or will you experience some kind of pushback? So kind of testing a man to see if he has the kind of status, whatever, balls, whatever you want to call it, in order to push back against you and not give in to your every whim. And I think, and I find that women's kind of self-help books are very often like, you go girl and you're amazing as you are, and there's nothing you need to do to change in any way, shape, or form, and somebody will love you just as you are. Whereas I find men's self-help books are very much saying you should work out, you should be playing chess, you should be trying to sharpen your mind, and you also need to play this game that women are playing. Whereas I really haven't read and I've been trying to read some women's self-help books that say, no, you are a woman and you are playing a game, but you're deceiving yourself about these games that you are playing. And I find that I'm very self-aware about the kinds of ways that I am testing things out and seeing where men are at with me.